If you are a woman dating a man in a relationship, you guys have been together for any length of time, and it is unclear to you whether or not he's serious, his intentions are unclear, then he's already showing you by his actions what he thinks about you. You're not that gal. You're not the one. But I don't know masculine men who are going out of their way to seek emotional validation from women. Especially these are masculine men who are the kind of men a lot of ladies like. Confident, assured, have leadership abilities, can protect, can provide. Those kind of men aren't necessarily looking for women to make them feel like they're a man or feel better. So y'all let me know if that's just blatant cap. Because that's what that feels like to me. What does an emotionally unavailable or an emotionally toxic man look like? What are his characteristic traits? What are his behaviors? I'm sure there are many women out there that could just give me at least 5 examples off the top of their head. No questions asked. It would be easy. But then if I was to ask, okay, so what does a emotionally unavailable woman look like? What are the traits of an emotionally toxic woman? I feel some of us might actually have a harder time answering that question. And one of the things I'd come to recognize when it comes to emotions or emotional well-being between men and women, I think there's a lot of misconception around this idea of men being emotionally available. Put another way, I feel as if sometimes it's more common for women to want to pathologize the emotions of men. And sometimes there's just this belief that men, when they are emotionally available or healthy, will emote, will share their emotions, will talk, will express themselves in the exact same way women will. And I just think that that's really unfair and also unrealistic, because we have to be in acceptance, I believe, that men and women are naturally different, and therefore there are going to be ways that women naturally express their emotions, and there are going to be ways that men naturally express those emotions. And that doesn't mean that it's necessarily good or bad. But what happens is we exist in a culture that I think is so used to pathologizing men that now I see the ways in which even masculine expression or masculine emotional expression is also pathologized and even demonized. And even now it's to the point to where there's this assumption that men are inherently emotionally inept. At the same time, there's not this same critical lens in women's ability to be emotionally inept or at least emotionally toxic. And I say this because I ran across this article. I think it posted earlier this year, but I'm just now getting wind of it. It was from the Huffington Post, and it says, "I'm a gender researcher, and this is the real reason women are stepping away from dating and relationships." And it's all based upon this idea of emotionally gatekeeping, this concept or this belief that women are tired of having to gatekeep or manage the emotions of men. And if you go on to read this article, I want to read a few aspects of it for you. What we actually see is that everything from what I've read up to this point, it's coming from a feminist or a female lens. It's coming from the perspective of, this is how I as a woman communicate, or as how I communicate with my friends. Therefore, this man isn't communicating in that way. Therefore, this man or men in general are emotionally inept. And I think one of the first things women have to realize is that men express their emotions differently. And that's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily means that they're inherently inept or lesser than, or that they're suppressing. Men just, their emotional makeup is different. And I think one of the other things that we also don't talk about is the way in which men very often manage the emotional chaos of females. Because I'm just going to be honest, I can see a very clear difference between women who are in healthy relationships and women who are single. And if there's one thing that I've noticed about women who are in healthy relationships, I find, in my opinion, that sometimes there may be a level of stability or a level of cohesiveness. Men sometimes have to manage the emotions of women. Let's just be honest. Anybody who's been married for any length of time or in a long-term relationship recognizes that there are very much times when men are a balancing force to women's emotional chaos. Let's just be honest. And of course, each personality is different. There are some times when there may be a woman who's more quiet or reserved and the man's more, outgoing or whatever. But I'm just saying, by and large, anybody who's in a relationship for a long time, for a long term, and a man and a woman knows that there are countless examples where a man is bringing a sense of stability and oftentimes bringing a sense of stability and calm and perspective when a woman is just having an emotional, chaotic moment, because that does happen. And again, I'm speaking generally. I'm not saying that this is every single situation, but if we're just being honest, We all know that. I don't even have to explain that. And the reason I know that men oftentimes bring a level of emotional stability and also a level of emotional validation is because even if you look at feminist women or women who are decentering men or don't want to be in romantic relationships or interactions with men, still may have male friends. They still may have gay male friends, but they're still going to have a guy or men in their life in some capacity who they are talking with, who they are engaging with, who is offering that male input. I think it's biological, honestly. Again, we're very quick to want to pathologize men for not emoting or not acting or behaving in the way in which women do. We don't understand that their emotional makeup actually sometimes helps bring us a sense of stability that we may need when we're having a chaotic moment. You know what I mean? If you're just in your cycle or off your cycle, or women's bodies are always changing. This is why women are always in journeys. Women are always on some different journey, the hair growing journey, a health journey, a colorism journey, or a self-love journey, or emotional journey, or a exercise journey, or a self-care. Like, women are always on journeys because we're always shifting. There's always an aspect of us hormonally. There's always something shifting, and so that's going to be expressed in our emotional makeup. It's going to be expressed sometimes in the way in which we connect, emote, talk to each other. And as women, we understand this innately, but I think it's a problem, and I think it's honestly wrong when we expect men to act and be the same way. So with that said, I came across this article. I haven't had a chance to really read the whole thing. I just read the first paragraph, but I wanted to just take a brief look. And out the gate, I do think as if this person is, again, pathologizing men, doing what a lot of women do, judging men for not emoting or not talking or expressing themselves in the same way, while not also looking in the mirror, or at the very least understanding that there's a different way that men express themselves, and that's fine. So, okay, here it says, Ava, 27, seemed unbothered by her partner's inability to communicate his emotions. It says, we have enough to think about, she told me as she slid her laptop off her tote bag. Still dressing in her tweed blaze for work, it wasn't serious enough. She's been dating Mac for a few months, and when it struck her, mid-conversation with a friend, that she had no idea what he felt about her or their future, so she stopped asking. Okay, before I even read on, first off, if you are a woman dating a man in a relationship, you guys have been together for any length of time, and it is unclear to you whether or not he's serious, his intentions are unclear, then he's already showing you by his actions what he thinks about you. You're not that gal. You're not the one. Because when a man finds a woman that he is serious about and she is the one that he wants, there aren't mixed signals. He's not vacillating, going back and forth. He's not sending you double-mindedness. He's not doing that. When a man is serious and he's found his wife, he's going to want to secure her as soon as possible, because he's like, that's my side, that's my rib, that's my other half, that's whatever, right? That's wifey. So when they're saying that, they're trying to, nail her down before anybody else gets her. So if a man is with you for any significant amount of time and he hasn't made it clear that you're that one to him, then he's already spoken. Like, you don't need to have a conversation. And again, this is where I think sometimes women don't understand that men do operate differently. This is why I don't necessarily always like the need to try to blur the genders and act as if biological differences of gender don't impact the way we behave, like they absolutely do. And I think this is a prime example. Like, men very much move with actions. And they're like, if he's not made it clear to you based upon his action and based upon his way he's treating you, that you are that one to him, then move on. To me, it's already clear. Like, you shouldn't have to have a conversation. You shouldn't have to second guess. And so already out the gate, I'm like, this article is being based off of a false premise, or just it's being based off of a situation that's already, the conclusion's already there. Anyways, okay. So Sarah, 21, recalled sitting on her bed with her boyfriend, begged her to hear him out. He wasn't remorseful for cheating. He just no longer wanted to sit with his shame. Okay, so they're 21, they're young, he's a cheater. Okay, that's not good. It says, I was done, she said, and yet he expected her to comfort him. I had to help him find the words for his feelings on his actions, long silences, teasing through shame and self-hatred. He didn't know what he wanted to say, she said, and then I made him feel okay about it. These stories reflect a shift among young women in which more and more of them are quiet quitting these relationships. Women are now 23% less likely to want to date than men. Not because they don't care, but because they feel they've invested too much emotional labor without support in return. Again, what we're not talking about is 80-20 rule, right? Again, we're not talking about the fact that there are women biologically are hypergamous or tend to want to date men who are at least who they perceive who are at least on their level or higher than them. Put another way, women are mostly attracted to the same men, right? Like, they want men who have looks, who have status, who have height. who have income, or, in their case, when they're young, maybe they have the potential for a higher earning income, or they get a lot of attention. Like, other ladies want the man, and that makes you feel special that other women want him. And so you may want it, right? So we're not talking about the fact that women have the tendency to choose the same kind of men. This has been proven and many different caveats. And as a result, sometimes ladies are having the same experience partially because of the men that they're choosing. I have to wonder, how many non-cheating men was she not interested in? Did she overlook? Did she maybe friend zone? Did she not give the second time a day? And again, I'm not saying that it was right for him to cheat, and I'm not saying that it's her fault that he cheated. But what I'm saying is, like, a lot of times these things are told from one particular narrative and one particular perspective, but they're not giving us the whole truth. She mentioned an example of a 21-year-old, likely a college student, or who knows, man who cheated. Not all men cheat, right? And there are women out there who cheat too. So I'm like, that to me doesn't prove the fact that men are emotionally unavailable. But to use this as a way to try to paint a picture on how all men are acting, and that when men mess up, women are there trying to pick up the pieces, that's not necessarily true. And then we also have to understand too, as a woman, it's like, well, why would you also want to be in that kind of situation? That's also something to ask. Like, if you do feel comfortable in that kind of situation as a woman, what is that about? And then lastly, I have to also ask, it's like, what kind of men are you being interested in? What kind of men are you also attracted to? So I think there's multiple things have to be on the table when we're looking at who is emotionally mature and who's not. And I always believe water seeks its own level. Relationships are very reflective. And so, sometimes people could be attracted to cheaters or attracted to people who treat them wrong, maybe because of their own insecurities, or maybe they're just immature. Maybe they don't know any better. It's a learning experience. Who knows? But it can't just be, bad, men bad, woman good. That's just not a really honest paradigm. Now, here's where I think it gets BS. It says the other side of the masculinity crisis, the exhausting emotional intelligence gap. Here it says, in intimate relationships, young women are taking on a disproportionate load of invisible emotional labor, often supporting men through intense feelings of failure and isolation from friends. Many men describing feeling weird or like a waste of time when opening up to male friends, instead reserving vulnerability for the relationships with women. That's not my experience at all. If any of you guys in the comment section have anything like this, please let me know. So I can't really speak to that, because I'm like, that's the kind of men that I'm around, or that I know, that's not like the men that I know don't seek emotional validation from other women because they're men. And they're like, these women aren't going to understand, especially as a black man. Like, a black man going out of his way to try to seek emotional validation from black women? Like in 2025, really? So I'm just like, I don't see this happening. Maybe it does in some sentences or in some aspects, in some spaces, but I don't know masculine men who are going out of their way to seek emotional validation from women. Especially these are masculine men who are the kind of men a lot of ladies like: confident, assured, have leadership abilities, can protect, can provide. Those kind of men aren't necessarily looking for women to make them feel like they're a man or feel better, at least from what I have observed. So y'all let me know if that's just blatant cap, because that's what that feels like to me. It says, while men consider this unburdening the women a natural part of their relationships, those same women could describe it as work, which researchers at Stanford University call man keeping. Over the past 2 decades, I've interviewed dozens of young men and women about their relationships. What's emerged is a sense that women are absorbing the emotional fallout of a crisis they didn't create. The anxiety surrounding what it means to be a man in 2025 should matter to everyone. They're shaping not just our politics, but the very fabric of how women and men interact, shaping how we love, how we vote, and whether we can build a future together at all. Telling the other side of the masculinity crisis is key to solving it. The crisis is especially acute for younger men, with 2/3 reporting that no one really knows them. Christopher Pepper, co-author of the Talk to Your Boys, notes that Gen Z is the first generation to rely mostly on their phones to communicate. What we also need to include about this whole masculinity crisis is race. That's a very, very crucial component, because the experience of white men in America is dramatically different than the experience of black men in America systemically. And it's just really now, in the last few decades, that white men, I think, are probably having experience systemically that is more closely aligned to what black men have had since day one. Put another way, experiencing a system that they feel like doesn't benefit them, doesn't care about them, feeling ostracized, feeling that they don't really benefit or can't benefit, knowing that they don't necessarily have the support or the capacity to financially take care of their families or provide in ways that they were in the past. These are experiences that white men are now having that black men have had since day one, because black men, remember, we're not even considered human. like for the first few hundred years of this nation's history. So I think race is a key component because a lot of these things of our, like Black America as a whole, we're in a whole different category, I think, as far as emotionally, psychologically than many other cultures. But then now when they're having these conversations and they're making these blanket statements about men and women, then they kind of put all races in these categories, not understanding that every situation is incredibly unique. Black Americans have a unique experience when you understand that for the first few hundred years, our ancestors weren't even literally considered human. They were like categories. They weren't ascribed human traits legally. So the implications of that are completely different than a society where, men were considered humans and they were given access. They were given systematic access. Laws were based upon their experience, based upon them being the default. That's a completely different experience. So again, I'm saying that because now they're talking about this recent evolution, and maybe that's already telling me the perspective it's coming from. But also, I'm like, I find it to be incredibly biased because I don't know strong masculine men who are going out of the way to seek emotional validation or support from women in a feminist culture. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm like, particularly Black men who already know the system is not for you. And then they also understand that Black women, by and large, are also very feminist, and that has its own implications. I don't see those men going out of the way to try to get support from feminist women who see them as seen as a threat in a particular way. That doesn't make sense. So already I'm like, I kind of think this is cap, honestly, but that's just my opinion. You guys check it out. I think it's an interesting topic. I do think it's cap, but yeah, it's an interesting thought. What do you guys think about this whole thing? Let me know down in the comment section. Thank you so much for listening if you've gotten this far, and we'll talk later, okay? Bye.